Wolverine and Spider-Man are one of the most iconic, charismatic, and well-known characters in Marvel's history. What's going on, folks? Captain Forrest here, and today I got a spicy inverse that I'm going to be explaining. Today I got my boy Debater on the channel.
Yo.
And me and Debater, we're going to be going over inverse Marvel on who wins more often than not, Wolverine or Spider-Man. So how this is going to go down, I'm going to explain Wolverine's stuff. I will go over it briefly, because if you guys want a video on that, let me know down in the comment section. Same thing with Spider-Man. But yes, I will go over Wolverine's stats and abilities, and after that I will go ahead and leave the rest up to Debater to explain Spider-Man stuff. And then once we've done that, we're going to chop it up from there, explain the inverse, like who wins, just like unequalized, just straight up raw inverse consistency. And then after that, we will go on to a equal stats scenario where we will both explain our thoughts and give our reasons why we think who we think wins in an equal stats situation more often than not. And then after that, we will leave our thoughts with you guys, and you can also give your thoughts in the comment section on who you think wins. But anyway, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Wolverine. So starting off with Wolverine's attack potency. So just as like standard AP without claws, should be around multi-city block plus, with the low ends to the mid-ish, and he should be like small town level plus. He's been able to hurt characters like Captain America. He's been able to hurt the likes of Daredevil and Deadpool. They both have city block to multi-city block plus calcs. For example, like Deadpool surviving a nuke exploding on him, that was calced at multi-city block plus. I'll leave calcs in the description. And Captain America was able to block an explosion with a shield, which also did some splash damage on top of him. That was also calced at small town level. I'll leave links in the description. Moving on to his claws. Now this is where things get a lot interesting. Now his claws are around Herald tier, so it consists of range of low multiversal plus. You could argue multiversal plus, but that's more of a high end. We want to stick to consistency here. So his claws should be easily in the low multiversal ranges of attack potency. Wolverine has demonstrated on many occasions to stab and slice through Herald tier characters with his claws, such as Gladiator, who is comparable to characters like Thor and arguably Hulk, as there was a statement by Thanos that Gladiator's strength is comparable to the likes of Hulk's. Wolverine, this same Wolverine was able to slice through a suppressed Hulk. This same Hulk is powerful enough to channel the power of two universes. He's been able to slice through suppressed Thor like butter, and it's the same Thor that has gone toe-to-toe with Hulk on a good few occasions, securing the victory for the most part. And Wolverine was able to cut through chains that were strong enough to bind Hercules, and Hercules himself is comparable to these other Herald tier characters, and he has demonstrated to hurt characters like the likes of Thor and Hulk. Now moving on to the speed department, Wolverine, he's easily FTL. There is a calculation that puts him around 2 times the speed of light. I will leave calcs in the description. Also shoutouts to Benjamin Hellfire Productions for the calculation. Pretty impressive feat. He was able to dodge Cyclops' optic blast. Moving on to more of his impressive, well-known abilities. So Wolverine also has like instinctive reaction. He's able to fight on pure instincts. Not completely focusing more on the on muscle memory rather than his mind and thoughts. He's shown this on many occasions. He's also fought against telepaths who try to read his mind, and he resorts to instinctive tactics in order to completely nullify that weakness. He's also demonstrated precognition by tagging a speedster, by anticipating him, which is pretty impressive. And another noticeable trait for Wolverine, he also has great sensory He's able to track people with his sense of smell is insane. He can smell people from across bloody cities, arguably countries. He can smell you from far away. He's able to smell and detect like killing intent and danger in people's emotions. And another impressive thing as well, there was this one scenario where he was able to like detect someone and find someone who had no scent by smelling areas that contain no scent. Like, yeah, pretty insane. And another thing for Wolverine is his Berserker Rage. Now, his Berserker Rage is easily comparable to Thor's Warrior's Madness, which amps your stats by 10 times, which is pretty impressive. Both comparable. Scans will be on the screen, of course. And moving on to the rest of his other noticeable abilities, Wolverine, in terms of skill and adaptation, is absolutely insane. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into the meat and potatoes of his skill. So it's been stated and shown that Wolverine is a master of every fighting style, and has demonstrated to contend with the highly skilled fighters, such as putting Daredevil in a hold, and also showing his knowledge of pressure points by tagging Captain America, giving him a hernia. This same Captain America is also a master in every martial arts, and has demonstrated this against Calc, who has been defeated in combat by Captain America. This same Calc is a master of every fighting style, and Black Panther himself has studied every fighting style in the world and is a master in hand-to-hand combat. Captain America has also shown adaptation in combat. Black Panther himself complements Captain America's adaptation and skill, as Cap was able to counter Black Panther's fighting styles, and Captain America was able to also break out of a scroll bonds, which are designed to adapt to anything the prisoner does, which is very impressive. So Wolverine has demonstrated adaptation and some skill in combat, a very highly skilled combatant in his own right. And another thing for Wolverine, he also has great stamina. He's able to fight days on end, even enraged, and even in his berserker form. And Wolverine can also function in dark places, so his senses aren't hindered. He can fight just fine in any type of dark environments, which is very impressive. Another thing that I would like to add on, I'd like to talk about Wolverine's adamantium body and his claws. His claws and his adamantium body is very impressive. His adamantium lace claws are indestructible, which was stated in a guidebook. Another thing that is impressive as well is that his adamantium skeleton has proven to take and tank a subatomic to atomic destruction. He was able to just tank a nuclear explosion that completely vaporized his whole skin and internal organs, and he was just fine. His type 3 mortality is also impressive, because he's able to heal from just an adamantium skeleton, which is another thing I would like to add, which is very impressive. So he can heal from like crazy serious internal injuries, things that could prove fatal. And yes, that is pretty much it for Wolverine in terms of all the important stuff that I've added into this video. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it over to Debater to explain Spider-Man's half.
Alright, so basically what we have for Spider-Man, about Spider-Man, what we first need to take into account is that he's basically the Superman of the Marvel Street tiers. A lot of times he will like hold back or suppress himself heavily against the opponents he's fighting. But despite that, he should still scale to multi-city block to town level, even like higher, via the level he was beating the other people at. The people that Forrest mentioned, like Captain America, Deadpool, the rest of them, we've seen Spider-Man be able to beat down Deadpool pretty easily and without too much effort. And we see like when he finally, had enough of Deadpool's nonsense, he's been able to like one-shot him in singular attacks. And we've seen him be able to, and we're basically able to basically see him like hurt people on the level of Rhino when he's like not holding back. And keep in mind, Deadpool is another person who has basically been able to contend with Wolverine, who's like tanked his punches before. And we have Spider-Man being able to like, one shot him at times when he's really wanted to. Speed wise, he should easily scale to FTL. There are several calcs that get him to FTL. One that gets him to 3.6, one that gets him to like 9, to like over like 9.1 speed of light. Credits to Corimbus for that. But all of this is ultimately complemented by his basically his spider sense. The spider sense on a base level is basically like an instinctive response to danger, which always triggers basically his amazing spider-like reflex, allowing to like avoid injuries. So that's just like the base level of what it can do. But in a sense, it's pretty much a warning system. But it also works like a radar. It allows him to like react to like any forms of danger. Some stuff we basically see from it is that like it can slow his own perception of time, which keeps him like 10 steps ahead of his opponents. Can take 360-degree snapshots. It also allows him to interfere with like several technological mind controls. Probably one of his more impressive showings of it is when he was able to detect Doctor Strange's astral form, which exists on a metaphysical plane. It also allows him to like run through many different possible battle scenarios. And we've also seen his spider sense be able to like contend with Spider-Woman on occasion, which can see through like multiple like different futures. So in relation to Wolverine, via him being able to like beat up people who Wolverine would scale to pretty easily, he should be stronger. Speed wise, aside from the FTL thing, we actually have several cases where he's actually been able to outspeed Wolverine before. When he was Superior Spider-Man, he stated to be faster. Basically, Oct took Peter's body. Every time that they fight, he's shown to be like faster. Other Spider-Man, like Kane, states he's faster, and we've also have Spider-Man being able to defeat an amped Kane. Black Panther, who's been able to outspeed Wolverine on 2 separate occasions, has failed to react to Spider-Man because Spider-Man has been able to casually dodge strikes. Wolverine, while assisted by the X-Men, he's also been able to outspeed all of them. So that's a brief rundown of his strength and speed in relation to Wolverine. He should basically scale to and above like the physicality that he's displayed, like Wolverine's punches and his actual like combat speed. And that's basically a rundown what his spider sense can do as well.
Right. So let's look at it from a straight up inverse scenario. So I'm gonna go ahead and give my thoughts on who wins more often than not in an inverse situation, and then after I've chimed in, I'm gonna go ahead and let Debater give his thoughts. So if we look at this from an in-character perspective and of course an inverse setting, I'm going to talk about 2 of these combatants, Wolverine and Spider-Man. I'll explain the stats and I'll explain like why I think Spider-Man wins and takes victory more often than not, but I will also be mentioning some things for Wolverine. Now yes, the pros, Spider-Man does have the speed edge and the AP edge. Spider-Man has higher AP, you can argue into city, city level Spider-Man. Wolverine just doesn't have the AP or the durability necessary in terms of like physicality. So Spider-Man would be able to, if he really wants to, he could just completely knock out Wolverine and incapacitate him. He won't obviously be able to get through the adamantium skeleton, of course, because it's just way too durable. That thing's taken attacks from Herald tier characters, and Wolverine's been fine. So the best win cons for Spider-Man is purely his speed, his raw AP, and also the spider webs. The spider webs would prove a big problem for Wolverine. And in an in-character scenario, Spider-Man likes to play with his food a little bit. He kind of likes to joke about and act like a very cocky and arrogant dude. But if he senses Wolverine like getting like a bit too much, he will just, you know, take it right out of the ball game. He will just nip it in the bud, restrain him with webs, or just knock him out. And plus, Spider-Man does have precognition of his own, of course, with the Spidey sense. Unfortunately, it is above Wolverine's pay grade. It's still impressive that Wolverine has precognition and instinctive reaction. That will help. That won't help too much, unfortunately, because Spider-Man's just way too fast. Regardless, Spider-Man would take victory over Wolverine. Now, let's look at Wolverine. Yes, if we talk about the claws, if Spider-Man gets tagged by those claws, it is a GG. There is no way in hell Spider-Man is going to be able to withstand his adamantium claws, which bypass durability, completely slice through you like butter. As I mentioned, it's been able to slice through Herald Tears like it's just like it's caviar, slice through like sliced bread. If those claws connect on Spider-Man, it's a GG no re. But if we go off arguments and like in character arguments, in terms of skill, unfortunately Wolverine's at a little bit of a disadvantage. Yes, if Wolverine gets the chance, if he's up close, he will go for skill. He'll like slash you up and use some martial arts. He completely bullies Spider-Man in skill. Like he would completely doo-doo on Spider-Man in a skill situation. He'd outskill Spider-Man and just rip him to shreds, rip him to ribbons with his adamantium claws if it came onto like a really close confrontation. So Wolverine does have some ways of dealing with Spider-Man if Spider-Man does get too close and gets too cocky. If Spider-Man would leave the situation for too long, Wolverine does have his adaptation, so he could adapt to Spider-Man if Spider-Man does leave the fight too long. But of course, there is another issue. If Wolverine is too irritated, if he becomes irrational and impulsive, it will impede his combat efficiency, so he will fight more of a spurg than use his skill. So he won't fight focused, which would be a big, huge hindrance for Wolverine if he gets into that state. Berserker Rage won't really occur because Spider-Man will just nip it in the bud. Of course, the complete speed edge, and he would be able to just precog it and just deal with it in time. And yes, overall, there are some good arguments for both, but more often than not, I gotta give it to Spider-Man like 8 times out of 10, purely because of the raw speed, more win cons, and more options to deal with Wolverine. So yes, I'm gonna go ahead and let my boy Debater chime in and give his 2 cents on the matter.
Alright, so I agree that Spider-Man would basically take victory. Now, here's something that we need to like mention. Now, Wolverine does have his advantages. Let me break this down. His main advantages are superior healing factor, most likely superior durability, his claws, and his fighting skill. So I agree with Forrest's points, but one of the reasons that I think he would win is because like those 4 advantages, I feel like Spider-Man could counter, or it would just nullify. Starting off with skill, now Wolverine does have a massive skill edge over him. Spider-Man does have skill over his own, you know, learning teaching himself in martial arts every day, and like being trained by Captain America, Black Widow, and Shang-Chi in the Way of the Spider. But the thing is, right, Spider-Man, he probably operates that he would use what little skill he has, his webbing and his speed, to like overcome like higher skill, or at least compete. We've seen him use this against Iron Fist before, when he's basically like, the proportionate strength and speed of a spider is all I need. So basically, he would use like his strength and speed and webbing to compete against people of higher skill. We've seen him use this against Shang-Chi, Iron Fist, Black Panther before as well. Also against villains like Taskmaster as well. And the thing to note is that like even when he was getting outskilled in Civil War, he was able to like land hits upon like Captain America. Well, this is basically when he had no skill at all, by fighting man to spider. So his like unorthodox ways will allow him to like get the to basically make skill moot. Healing factor, I don't think that would really like come to a factor because we've seen like Superior Spider-Man, who's actually like less than current Spider-Man, like being able to knock out Wolverine before, and durability, we've seen Spider-Man knock him out, and yeah, and based in his webbing, we've seen Spider-Man have the intelligence and the webbing to web up in a way that if Wolverine sheathed out his claws, he basically like stabbed himself in the brain. So how I see this fight going is that like Spider-Man would either web him up in a way that he'd be immobilized or he'd simply like knock him out. Now Wolverine does have ways to win with those claws, but I ultimately don't think that that'll be enough before Spider-Man can do all this stuff, especially with like the speed edge. So I give this to Spider-Man like 8 out of 10.
Agreed. So just to quickly summarize, pretty much Spider-Man would take victory more often than not in an inverse setting with no stats equalized. The precognition is just far too great. He would be able to precog a lot of Wolverine's movements. Wolverine does have instinctive reaction and precognition of his own, which is pretty impressive. It's just the quality and the layers are just far beyond what Wolverine is capable of. And yes, Wolverine does have some win cons via his adamantium claws. He could definitely slice through Spider-Man like butter and rip him apart. But of course, because of the speed edge and the AP edge and the webs and the versatile ways of Spider-Man being able to subdue Wolverine, it ultimately would amount to nothing, unfortunately. So now that we've given our thoughts on the inverse setting, let's talk about if the scenario was equal stats. So I'm gonna go ahead and give my thoughts on who wins in an equalized situation. AP and speed, those will be equalized, and then after I've chimed in and given my thoughts, I will go ahead and let Debater give his thoughts. So in a equal stats scenario, this is extremely difficult to like pinpoint who could actually win, because there's so many ways and so many arguments as to who could win now that speed and AP isn't really an issue anymore. So I'm going to rep my boy Wolverine. I think Wolverine would take victory at least 5 times out of 10 with the highest utmost difficulty. So with Wolverine has the massive skill edge. Of course, as I mentioned previously, being able to take on masters at all forms of martial arts, such as Captain America, and being able to deal with his adaptation, being able to get blows on him, which is very impressive. The adamantium claws would be Wolverine's biggest win con. Yes, we need to take into account precognition. Spider-Man's Spidey sense is no joke. It's able to detect astral beings. It's able to detect multiple scenarios and dangers and threats. Wolverine also has his own danger sense too. He can sniff out danger and also precog and also smell killing intent. That would sort of help him to some degree. If Spider-Man basically doesn't seal the deal and deal with Wolverine, especially a pressed Wolverine who's irritated, that would be a problem. We have seen that yes, Spider-Man's precognition is amazing. It's very great, but of course it does have its the Spidey sense does have its flaws. Spider-Man, sometimes it won't go off, sometimes it will precog something else, and if Spider-Man gets a bit too comfortable with Wolverine in that scenario, especially in character, since they'll be messing about, Wolverine could just slice and dice him and give him like a good thorough hiding with the adamantium claws. And of course, in a skill scenario where they're like, let's say like 2 meters apart, Wolverine would just rip him to shreds via skill and also adaptation. But yes, those are my thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and leave it to Debater to give his thoughts on who he thinks wins in terms of like Spider-Man.
No, I'm very torn on who I think would win in equal stats. I think it's very very close. I almost want to say tie, but the thing about it is at close range. We know this at close range. Wolverine definitely has the advantage. At long range, Spider-Man definitely has the advantage. Now, what I'll say is that in character, Spider-Man takes Wolverine way more seriously than he does like compared to like other superheroes he may face, because he knows he always has those claws of disposal. So he takes it way more seriously. So I think he's going to rely more on his agility or like webs to like basically to keep distance. Now, while he does have the skill and adaptation, I think better precog will allow him to like keep a step ahead, and Spider-Man could like get it. And so the thing is, like, Spider-Man, like, the longer the fight will go on, Spider-Man will take it like more and more seriously, especially like if he's like near death, because that's when you see him take fights most seriously. So I think I think the precog will allow him to stick in the fight longer. Because of that, I think he'd have more time to use his intelligence to actually like outsmart Wolverine, because we've seen him outsmart Wolverine before. Because like he led him to these two rocks and like use his webbings as an elastic band to send him flying. The thing about intelligence is that like if you don't have time to use it, then like it won't really matter. Like I could beat Albert Einstein in a fight, but like if Albert Einstein has like a long time to prepare, then like basically I might be screwed. But basically because like Spider-Man has the webbing and the agility and the precog, he basically has the means to keep it at a range for a while, which will give him the time necessary to come up with a plan or to outsmart him, because we have seen him outsmart him before. So I see it like maybe like Spider-Man will like eventually knock him out over like a long period of time, or he's able to like outsmart him and use those webs to immobilize him. So I think Spider-Man would still take it like 5.2 out of 10. It's very, very, very high difficulty. It's very close. That's my journal opinions on it.
Awesome. Well, folks, if you guys enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. Give me your thoughts on who you think's in an equal stats situation, Wolverine or Spider-Man. But yes, folks, I'd like to say a huge shout out to, of course, the beta and of course Daddy Dio for giving me some scans too for the video. Much appreciated. But yes, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.